As US President Donald Trump wraps up high-level meetings in Riyadh, his visit marks a pivotal moment in US Gulf ties. The GCC summit has placed Gaza, Iran and Syria at the heart of regional diplomacy. Trump has promised continued partnership and praised Gulf leaders for their collective efforts to end the war in Gaza, while announcing a historic arms deal and the lifting of US sanctions on Syria. Amid these developments, GCC leaders voiced renewed support for Palestinian statehood and regional de-escalation, all while stressing on the need to stop the war on Gaza and reach a final solution for the Palestinian cause. Will Trump's Gulf tool reshape Washington's regional strategy? Can the United States broker a lasting settlement in Gaza? And how will Trump's decision to lift Syria's sanctions affect its recovery? Welcome to In Depth. As reported by The Economy Middle East, the fifth GCC-US summit officially kicked off today in Riyadh, coinciding with Trump's visit and focusing on key issues such as economic cooperation, trade investment, and regional security. Held at the King Abdulaziz International Conference Center, the summit addressed both regional and global economic challenges while also exploring pathways to peace in the Middle East. In a significant policy shift, US President Donald Trump announced during the summit that he would lift all sanctions on Syria. Meanwhile, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman reaffirmed Saudi Arabia's commitment alongside the US and GCC partners to easing regional tensions. He also called for an end to the war in Gaza and also emphasized the need for a lasting resolution to the Palestinian issue in line with the Arab Peace Initiative. For more analysis, we're joined from Washington by Dan Renee, political researcher. A very warm welcome. And from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, international relations specialist. Again, a very warm welcome to In Depth. And Mr. Renee, we start off with how President Trump's decision to lift sanctions on Syria marks a dramatic shift in U.S. policy. And how do you assess this move strategically, sir? Does it represent a shift in how Washington balances alliances in the Middle East?
Well, we're definitely seeing some very significant changes from this trip to the way previous U.S. leaders have acted toward the Middle East. If we look at what President Biden did on a previous trip, I mean, he came away with a bump and a little more. President Trump is coming away with about $2 trillion in investments from the region. And yes, Syria definitely was quite a surprise, but at the same time, it does signal that a pathway to peace, a pathway to prosperity is something that the president is really focused on here. You know, there's one surefire way that will solve most conflicts in general, and that is promoting wealth, promoting affluence. It's very hard to get people to fight when they're all very, very wealthy. And so I think that's exactly what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to find a pathway to peace, trying to find a pathway to open up more markets, a pathway to open up more investment. And this lifting of sanctions on Syria is going to be a way to find more ways to help rebuild And it sends a clear signal to those who might wish harm when it comes to Hamas and other proxy actors that they're not going to have as much influence in those areas anymore. And it allows the United States to have a significant influence in that region as well. So it is certainly a incredibly productive trip for Donald Trump. There's just zero question about it that, if we compare this to previous trips to the Middle East, not only is it a tremendous economic success, it's really shaping up to be a tremendous geopolitical success. And the fact that a hostage returned too, it's an effective humanitarian success. So it checks all the boxes, all very positive, all very good from at least the president's perspective at this point.
Perfect, sir. We move on to Dr. Mohammed Osman, but of course, sir, I'm going to ask you about your take on Mr. Rene's, of course, narrative and what he said. But first, do you think that Trump attending a meeting with GCC in Riyadh and his visit to the region as a whole is a signal that the United States is trying to open new channels of communication and reviving its relations with the Middle East, sir?
Thank you for having me, Rana. Greetings to you and your guest and your dear audience. Of course, President Trump seeks to reinvigorate the United States relationship with or engagement with the Middle East region. Nevertheless, the Gulf region, of course, given its status as a net exporter of fossil energy, it is basically still the basic commodity that fuels the global economy, and each and every industrialized country has a deep-rooted interest in maintaining the stability and the security of this region. So the United States, for the past 80 years, has always been keen on maintaining a strategic relationship with the countries of this region, especially Saudi Arabia, and also they have been deploying a lot of security assets in order to secure their interests over there. So it does not surprise me to see how President Trump is doing business or attempting to do business with the Gulf leaders. They can speak each other's language. They understand each other's mindsets. He does not come to lecture them about anything like President Biden used to do, for example. And he's all about business and pursuing common benefits. And I think that's the parameters. These are the parameters through which we have seen yesterday's and today's summits transpire, and we have seen the kind of deals that have been reached between the Gulf states and the United States, mutually beneficial. On the one hand, trillions of dollars in investments will be pumped into the U.S. economy, and this is something that the Trump administration needs for the next years in order to resume their efforts to enhance the state of the U.S. economy through furthering economic growth, creating more jobs, reducing inflations. These trillions definitely will help in achieving just that. And on the other hand, Saudi Arabia has brokered a great arms deal with the United States for about $140 billion. Saudi Arabia feels that it needs to invest much more in defense, and the United States is open to offering it its defense needs. And also
Dr. Mohammed, do you read this as a win-win situation, sir, and a win-win deal between both countries?
Definitely. When we speak of it from a bilateral aspects, not taking other regional factors into account, it is. And also the Trump administration's policy vis-a-vis Iran, the idea of engaging Iran in a serious negotiation to reach a deal that will actually address the concerns, the genuine concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions. I think this is something that is to the liking of the Gulf leaders, especially Saudi Arabia, who do not want a nuclear Iran, a nuclear-armed Iran, and also do not want to see the United States engage in a war with Iran, as the Israelis do, for example, because this will be detrimental to their own security and their own interests in the region, the Saudis, basically, because Iran will basically retaliate against US targets inside Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. And also the ceasefire between Iran and, excuse me, between the Houthis and the United States that has been reached, not targeting the Houthis in exchange for not for the Houthis not targeting maritime freedom of navigation, of maritime navigation in the southern Red Sea area. I think this is something that also came to the convenience of the Gulf leaders who were not, or especially Saudi Arabia, who was very unsettled by the ongoing conflict in Yemen, for example. However, I know that the Palestinian-Israeli issue or cause has been discussed between the Gulf leaders and Trump. However, I do not see that it has been prioritized the way it should have been. I think, judging by what we have heard from President Trump's speech in Riyadh yesterday, whether in the forum with Prince Mohammed bin Salman or today in the summit with the Gulf leaders, we did not see any meaningful indication that would indicate that the United States is willing to apply serious pressure on Israel in order for it to end its war on Gaza.
Dr. Mohammed, I'll leave it here and I'll be back to you again. But Mr. Renee, Trump told Gulf leaders at the meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh that he urgently wants to make a deal with Iran to wind down its nuclear program, but that Tehran cannot have a nuclear weapon, which Dr. Mohammed Osman was just mentioning now. Of course, his own perspective is all worth respect, and we're going to interact now. Do you think this is setting the stage for diplomacy or confrontation, sir? And of course, Dr. Mohammed Osman is with us, and he can answer, and you can answer as well. But we start with you, of course, sir.
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, the president was incredibly clear. He has been clear from during the campaign and from day one in his time in office that the United States would not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That has been just a complete that's the line. That's the line. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and Trump has made that abundantly clear. That said, the fact is that diplomacy is something that I am optimistic will work. We get a lot more out of talking than not talking. When there is silence, there's fear, there's distrust. But if we do have some serious negotiations here, and we have a situation where we may be able to figure out a pathway toward de-escalating these situations and finding a pathway where Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, where they are not funding terrorism, where there is a lack of this type of activity, then again, I think that this is a positive development. The more diplomacy, in my opinion, the better. And these talks are something that could be incredibly productive. But I think we have to go back and look at something that Ronald Reagan once said. It's a trust but verify. There have been decades of mistrust, generations of mistrust between these nations. So we have to be very careful about this diplomacy. But again, it is important to continue this dialogue. And I'm optimistic that it will lead to a pathway towards peace.
Dr. Mohammed Osman, do you agree with Mr. Renee when it comes to the nuclear weapons in Iran that Trump is insisting on and on that there should not be any nuclear weapons under any condition?
I think yes, I agree. I agree that Trump's policy with regards to dealing with the Iran issue is quite level-headed, based on logic and rational. To say the least, it seems that the United States does have a genuine will to achieve a deal with Iran with regards to their nuclear capabilities. Of course, the U.S. position still is quite dubious, quite foggy in many ways, because we do not see, sometimes we see contradicting statements. On the one hand, we had Steve Witkoff at the beginning of all of this saying that no, we do not want to see we do not seek to completely dismantle the nuclear program of Iran, and we only seek to limit their capabilities. And then President Trump would say that it should be totally dismantled. And then Steve Witkoff would again say, oh, we do not seek the total dismantlement, but we want to stop enrichment entirely. So there are contradicting statements from various U.S. officials with regards to the Iran issue. And I think it reflects a certain, not between Witkoff and Trump, but other members of the U.S. administration were much more hawkish and were actually incited by Israel in order to try to sabotage the talks with Iran and push things towards confrontation. And I think what President Trump did by basically sacking Mike Waltz, the national security advisors, on account of several things, including this matter.
Okay, got your point, Dr. Mohammed, but I just wanted to ask you.
Just my final point.
Oh.
What I mean but still, the U.S. Policy on Iran so far, I believe, is positive and might yield results unless Israel does succeed in sabotaging these efforts one way or another. Please,
Dr. Mohammed, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council told Trump that establishing a Palestinian state was central to stability and prosperity in the Middle East. Do you believe Trump is willing to support this framework, sir? And if he is willing, sir, is it trajectory or reality?
The short answer is no. We have not heard, since President Trump has come to office for his second term, we have not heard him say once that he supports the two-state solution. If anything, during his first term, he proposed the so-called deal of the century, which was not in line with international law or UN Security Council resolutions on Palestine, and basically negated the prospects of a coherent Palestinian state. And now all the propositions we have heard from President Trump is that we should think outside the box and that we should think in different ways to make peace. However, peace cannot be achieved without delivering justice to all the parties. And the Palestinians are the aggrieved party in this regards. And I think that they are being deprived of their most basic right of self-determination that is recognized by international law. Palestine is recognized as a state by over 150, by nearly 150.
Of course, sir.
So attempting to avoid that, this is what President Trump has done. Not one mention of a peaceful settlement, not one mention of a peace plan. All he spoke about is his wish to see a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the war, because the war basically is an inconvenience to him in the region. And even that, he's not pressuring Netanyahu to do. And Netanyahu has just pledged the other day, just yesterday, in defiance of President Trump's rhetoric and the reported fallout between them, even though the fallout itself is quite questionable as to how deep it is really. Netanyahu defiantly said that he will order his army to reoccupy the Gaza Strip. He will launch the so-called Operation Gideon's chariots with all the biblical connotations of such a grim acronym to give to a military operation, indicating that he will basically exterminate the Palestinians and move them to the southern parts of Gaza. It's a textbook act of ethnic cleansing. He's pledging to do that. He's pledging to escalate. And he said even if hostages or detainees are to be released, we will pause the war temporarily, and then we will resume hostilities. It doesn't seem that President Trump is doing a very good job pressuring Netanyahu, if he really is pressuring Netanyahu on the Palestinian file. If anything, President Trump is letting the Palestinians down, is letting down the basic concept of human rights that has been defeated and voided of any meaning with what has been transpiring in Gaza for the past 19 months.
No.
Mr. Renee, apparently you disagree. So at the beginning you were okay, but now I think you disagree. So your take, please, and Dr. Mohammed Osman is there to answer you, of course.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you don't solve generations, centuries of conflict in a week. You know, the fact of the matter is that Trump has come in here in order to try to return hostages, in order to save a humanitarian crisis, in order to save lives.
Not even one reference was made. We did not ask Mr. Trump to solve anything.
He's the only one who's offering us a different solution. He's the only one who's offered a solution. What solution does Trump offer that's worked the last hundreds of thousands?
Attempting to subvert the two-state solution is not a solution. Moving the people of Gaza out of Gaza is not a solution. I'm sorry. This is a war crime.
Well, again, you might not like it, but guess what? There is at least a solution that can be talked about, and you can have a conversation about something
facilitating a form of genocide?
All or nothing approach to it.
Are you not familiar with any form of international law?
There's a new conversation that has started here. There is new leadership that has started here. And guess what? Durable peace is built on momentum, not on capitulation and support of terrorism.
What terrorism? What terrorism? What I'm speaking about
is terrorism. I mean,
what terrorism? Because I did not mention
humanitarian.
I did not. Listen. We can yell at each other all day. So just let me finish. Okay. What I said is that he did not propose a peace plan. He proposed nothing. He said that we need a ceasefire and we have to relocate those Gazans out of the Gaza Strip of a couple of months back and displace them into other countries. That doesn't sound like a solution to me, Mr. Renee. I'm sorry, and I think.
Well, you know what? At least it's something that's been offered. What else has been offered by any other side?
Egypt and the Arab countries have offered a pathway to peace.
They have offered a pathway. What else has been offered?
I think you should do your homework.
At least consider the situation and consider alternative solutions to peace.
There are alternative solutions in line with international law, and they are there. You choose not to see them. Each and every, you along with every other Israel supporter, that's your problem. There are solutions, and Egypt did propose a plan of.
You know what? Keeping a hold of hostages isn't a solution, is it? Keeping hostages is not a solution, is it?
What?
Is hostage taking a solution? No, it's not.
Of course not. No one condones hostage taking. No one condones Hamas. Screw Hamas. I'm not defending Hamas. I'm defending the people of Palestine who are being butchered on a daily basis. Yesterday, a hospital was bombed and 28 people died, including children.
I agree. There is a humanitarian crisis, and it is awful. Absolutely awful. The human price that is being paid there, it is
predicated by Israel.
It is unacceptable.
Predicated by Israel.
I completely agree.
But guess what? Who is the one that talks about getting humanitarian aid in there? It is
Donald Trump, the President of the United States, who's talking about getting humanitarian aid into that region. It is Donald Trump who's talking about trying to find a pathway to end that war.
And at the same time, he's giving Israel more bombs to butcher children.
Humanitarian
conflict. You know, so on the one hand, he's calling for humanitarian aid, and on the other hand, he is enabling the Israeli killing machine to go on. Something to be proud of. Really.
Again, we're talking. There is distance in daylight in between President Trump and Netanyahu. There's no question about that. But let's talk about this. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's President Trump and the American people who have found ideas at least explore. And again, you know, maybe we don't like the idea of displacing people and trying to rebuild the region, but guess what? It changes the course of the conversation. And if we have a conversation and a dialogue that starts a pathway to peace, if we're talking about a pathway to find a solution, we're talking about pathways to bring affluence to the region, you know what? These might be tough conversations and it might be ways to argue, but you know, let's try to figure out ways to make this incremental progress, to find a way to find a durable peace. And again, I get it.
Mr. Renee, did you find ways, sir, when the international community...
momentum here, we need dialogue.
Mr. Renee, did you find any solution, the entire global international community has been trying to stop the atrocities and genocides that Israel has been already doing in Gaza and in the Palestinian people and women and children that are dying every way? They've been finding every single tool to fight these very vulnerable people at the end of the day in each and every way. Where is the international community? Where is US President Donald Trump? Just a question, sir. how could we solve this in a constructive way to end the war in Gaza as soon as possible? And this is what Mr. Mohammed Osman or Dr. Mohammed Osman is trying to figure out. And tell you that Egypt has been trying to be a mediator and trying to solve a problem that no one is ever trying to solve, or that the international community is trying. What's your take, sir, on all that's going in Gaza at this point?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that we agree on things more than we disagree. The fact of the matter is, when diplomacy works, it can save lives. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. And we're looking for results, not rhetoric. We're looking for, trying to find ways to open these doors on multiple fronts, whether it's through security, whether it's through business and investment, and, trying to protect the freedoms and get hostages returned, stop an end to this horrible human outcome that we're witnessing here. And yes, we need global leadership. There's no question about it. But the fact of the matter is this global leadership requires diplomacy. It requires these conversations.
Sir, diplomacy did not work till today, sir.
Adherence to international law. It requires diplomacy and adherence to international law, suggesting the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians out of their land under the guise of voluntary.
Dr. Mohammed and Mr. Renee, could you please stay with us? And now we take you to live. We thank you so much for being with us in this episode, and unfortunately we have to move on now to live to Doha, where US President Donald Trump is making a high-profile stop as part of his 3-day tour of Gulf nations. Our coverage continues with the latest from the region.
On behalf of the State of Qatar, by His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar, and the Honorable Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. The signing ceremony has now come to an end, and now a joint statement from His Highness the Emir and the President.
Thank you very much. We had a couple of hours of great meeting with the President, and we discussed many issues, our great bilateral relationship, and also the situation in the region. Of course, I think after signing these documents, we are going to another level of relationship between Qatar and the United States. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. President, again for this historic visit. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And this has been a very interesting couple of hours. We discussed the world. We discussed Russia and Ukraine, where you've been a tremendous help in so many different ways. We certainly discussed Iran, where it's been really an interesting situation. I have a feeling it's going to work out. I think it's going to work. It's got to work out one way or the other. We know it's going to work out. But you were of great help, and other things. But in particular, trade. The trade is the Kelly's telling me from Boeing, it's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good. And that's 140. Was that a 140 or 160? Well, yeah, but you're right. It's actually 200, including the 40. So it's over $200 billion. But 160 in terms of the jets. That's fantastic. So that's a record, Kelly. And congratulations to Boeing. Get those planes out there. Get them out there. But I just want to thank you. We've been friends for a long time, long before politics. Well, for you it was politics. For me it wasn't, right? But we've been friends for a long time. And this is an outstanding man. He's a great man. And we're going to help each other. The United States is in a very strong position militarily. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. You're buying a lot of that equipment, actually, and I think we're going to see some of it in action tomorrow at the, we won't call it an air fair, but it's going to be sort of an air fair. We're going to be shown a display that's going to be incredible. They have the latest and the greatest of our planes and just about everything else. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun and very interesting. But I just want to thank you for the friendship, for the long-time friendship. And again, long before any of this stuff, we just liked each other. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But we always had a very special relationship. And we came from Saudi Arabia, where we have another great man over there that's a friend of yours. And you two guys get along so well and like each other. You sort of remind me a little bit of each other, if you want to know the truth. They're both tall, handsome guys that happen to be very smart. But he's also a very special guy, and it's good to see all the relationships forming in the Middle East, because the Middle East is really being talked about all over the world, and we're having a lot to do with it. We're helping a lot, but they're doing a tremendous job. So I just want to thank everybody very much for being here. I want to thank the media. The media has been very fair, actually, and it's a great honor to be with you. This is, you take a look at this room. This room is the real deal. That's called white marble. It's very hard to buy. Believe me, I know very well, because you try to buy it, you can't buy it. And you just take a look at what you have here. It's been incredible what you've been able to build as a nation. And we're with you all the way, and you know that.
Thank you. The ceremony has now come to an end.
Thank you for being friends for a long time before politics, a great man, and will help each other. And this, of course, continue all the time. And he also, this was the words of US President Donald Trump in a meeting with, of course, Prince Tamim of Qatar. And of course, he also mentioned that he just came from Saudi Arabia and met, of course, Prince Salman, and that he also they also like each other, meaning Prince Tamim and King Salman of Saudi Arabia, and that there is a very special relationship which came from the Saudi Arabia meeting between, of course, the United States and Saudi Arabia, and the United States and Qatar. Also a very special guy, mentioning, of course, he referring to to King Salman, special guy and friends. That's great, and he thanked everyone, and he was very thankful, of course, to Prince Tamim of Qatar and, of course, King Salman of Saudi Arabia. Trump also mentioned the Qatari Emir signed a number of cooperation protocols between both countries, which, of course, reached around $200 billion. He said many numbers and kept changing the numbers. This was Prince Tamim mentioned that it's a historic visit, and that the Ukrainian-Russian, of course, war was mentioned, and they were trying to reach a resolution about this. Also, Iran and the situation in Iran with regards to nuclear weapons, or dismantling Iran from nuclear weapons, was also mentioned, and are trying, and President Trump mentioned that they're reaching an interesting solution from his own perspective that he thinks will work out or will work out. These were his words, and of course numerous issues were also discussed. And US-Qatar are friends and long-time friends, in addition, of course, to Saudi Arabia, which he mentioned. Thanks, and this concludes today's episode of In Depth. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News, minute by minute, on everything that's taking place all around the world. Thank you very much for watching.